Hello, this is John. Normally at this point we would have some theme music and a nice introduction, but this week I wanted to return to our roots. When Dustin and I first started this whole project of having these podcasts, it was about doing interviews and telling local stories. And as we've gotten better and better over time, we added more production values and whatnot. We recently brought on Kate Vandermeer, and she has been extraordinary. We sent her out to talk to Amy Martin. And when I listened to this interview, it really took me back to the roots of where we started, about good conversations about what is happening locally. I have tried for a week now to edit this thing, but there's just so much here. So instead of doing all the production values, I've decided this week I'm just going to play the raw interview and let you listen. It's a bit long, and I apologize for that, but if you see it through to the end, they talk about a lot of good things. So let me get out of the way and let Kate and Amy do what they do.
Okay, I'm here with Amy Martin, our counselor for Ward 6, Port Dover, and we're going to ask her a few questions. Now, to get started, Amy, can you just tell us what inspired you to get into politics?
Oh, that's a long answer. I was asked to run, actually. Asked many times. I had to turn it down on multiple occasions, and then I was actually encouraged to attend a campaign school. So that quickly turned into a second campaign school, and the first was all about women in politics and young adults in politics, and then the second one was just basically more etiquette of running a campaign and so on. And it really wasn't until I attended the first campaign school that I had my eyes open to the concept that you did not need to be retired to do the job. You didn't have to have significant municipal experience to do the job. And there were all of these things, these benchmarks that I was telling myself I wasn't. I didn't have certain criterias. I wasn't checking boxes, and so therefore I wasn't an eligible candidate. But I quickly learned that wasn't the case. Just because that was the way council was always structured here in Norfolk County, it didn't need to remain that way. But prior to running and attending the campaign school, I was heavily involved in volunteer work for the Community Hub initiative. So that's really what brought me into council chambers. I was sitting there listening to meetings and watching it when it was web streamed, and participating in a volunteer group to kind of lobby a new effort and a new concept at council. So that was the beginning for me.
Yeah, it's nice to have some young, fresh people in council. It's definitely shaken things up a lot.
Yeah, I hope that that was part of my platform, that if I can lead by example, if I just only do one term and I leave, at the very least I hope that it shows to other young candidates that you can do this job and that you can have other employment and do the job, and you should try to do the job. So I think Councillor Rabbits and Taylor both help with that effort as well.
Good. Now, how would you describe the difference between kind of how you thought the job initially would be versus how it is now that you're in the trenches for a while?
Yeah, that is I think about this quite often, and I actually just had this conversation with my fiance the other day. I was naive. I was naive, and I remember collecting significant advice from other people I knew that had done the job, and I participated in a leadership program at Fanshawe College, and there was a panel of speakers that came there, and they helped you develop your project, whatever that leadership role you were looking to take on. They helped you really kind of define the craft that you were looking to go into. And there was a lady there who was a former council member, and I met with her, and I picked at her brain, and she said, you should start reading the agenda. They come out every Friday. Read the agenda, prepare yourself for some of the content and the knowledge that's in there. Recognize how much work and time it takes just to prepare for a council meeting, let alone go into a council meeting. And I met, another former elected official, and he said, know your procedural bylaw. Read the procedural bylaw. And so that's, just that, the policy and procedures involved in attending a meeting. But I went in fairly naive, thinking I'm going to change corporate culture and lead by example for other young adults. And my very first meeting, I was sitting in a planning meeting, talking about site plan control for an outdoor glamping site, and I remember thinking, "Ooh, here we go." It was provincial planning policies and information that was just quite significant, that over my head in a sense of what I was expecting I would be working on and what I was familiar with. So night and day difference on what I thought it would be and what it actually is, but you never stop learning, which is a great part of the job. You're always learning something new.
Now, how do you view kind of your relationships between like the other counselors and Mayor Chop? Like, what is the dynamic there? Do you kind of really collaborate together, or are you all kind of more like the lone wolf for your ward?
Yeah, it ebbs and flows. I campaigned on being the all Norfolk counselor, the all Norfolk approach, where you would be able to take off your Ward 6 hat and be able to recognize if something was good for the west end of the county, and it should be good for all of Norfolk County, or see the purpose in spending money to revitalize downtown Simcoe, even though that's not my community. So I try very hard to always touch base with my other council members and follow their lead on significant community initiatives that aren't necessarily as close, or I'm not hearing as much information about. But a lot of the time you go in there and you just do the job without connecting with other people. You have to be very cautious that you're not lobbying, votes, or furthering business outside of council. So you can only go so far with how you connect with your other council members on specific topics and issues. But I would say the dynamics of council change frequently. There are you have an ally, or you start to work on an allegiance with particular members, and then all of a sudden there's an issue that you fundamentally disagree with, and maybe the group that you typically vote and side with ends up on the other side of the issue from you, and there's no room for friendship in politics. You can't vote with your typical group per se, because that's what you want to do. Like, how could you sleep at night? So next thing you know, you're voting in favor with colleagues that you typically don't see eye to eye on, and that's okay as well. But because of that, the dynamics change and evolve all the time.
I get the sense of that watching the council meetings.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, who's gonna agree this time? All right. Now, on that note, being a really big supporter and advocate for the Hub project, and then seeing the community outrage, let's say, in West Norfolk specifically, how did that change how you felt about the Hub, or make you think differently?
It certainly matters, because public input and community engagement was another part of my platform. I wanted more. I wanted to hear from people more. I wanted more input. And so there wasn't just this select few who sits around a table and makes a decision because they want to. The more input and the more feedback you get, the more it's hard to deny that there are opposing views to whatever your preference is. So that is very important. But for me, the fundamental issues of the community hub have always been about finding efficiencies and spending wisely. And so when we were eligible to have funding matched, that was a no-brainer for me. And when we had, funds set out in a similar allotment to what we could spend on new, that was allocated for repairs on what we had that was existing, that allowed for no new growth, no new development in recreation and so on. That was another deal breaker for me. I didn't want to spend the same amount just retaining what we had. I really wanted to try and get some funds brought down to Norfolk. So yes, it matters. Location matters. All of the above, it does matter. And there are a lot of valid arguments out there as to why people are upset with that initiative. But if I can bring home extra money for Norfolk County, I would never, not open that door.
Now, Councillor Columbus, he brought up a couple meetings ago, um, he quoted like his original motion from the previous council about how there was a stipulation that the building the hub would be conditional on not having to close any of the like existing facilities, and also that there wasn't that limit of being within the urban boundary that was often talked about before. So do you think that is going to change anything, or do you think with COVID, the hub's kind of a moot point now?
I don't think it'll change anything. I could be wrong, but my understanding is that was all prior to my time on council. And although I followed the issue very closely, there is another motion that does state within the urban boundary and so on. And that was a reconsideration motion. So Mayor Chop and Councillor Columbus have had this debate a little bit. And I don't have the information in front of me with the dates and times on what motion supersedes the other. But at this point in time, I believe it's a moot point because the motion has gone through, the land has been purchased with the condition of receiving funding from the upper levels of government, and an application has been submitted. At this point in time, we're just waiting to hear really what's going to happen.
Yeah, and we should hear late July?
It's been pushed out due to COVID, so I'm not quite sure. Yeah,
darn.
We haven't heard anything as of yet that I'm aware
of. Do you have any insight into why the land for the hub was so expensive?
Servicing.
Oh, okay. Because it had to be shovel ready, right?
Yeah.
So it was a lot of work to bring it up to that level.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, let's move on from the hub, because let's put that behind us. Well, I think like talking to people, I think that if all of our arenas are secure and like we have success with the call for submissions, and everyone can stop worrying about is Langton gonna get shut down, et cetera, or Waterford, which I don't think would, but I think if they are safe, then people are gonna be like, you know what, have your hub, that's fine.
Right.
But it's the threat of, especially Langton, they are like
the timing of it really couldn't have been probably any worse, because we worked on the hub. We were in a tumultuous time at the county where we had turnover through our CAOs. We had staff submitting an application and the purchase of land, and all of these things were happening, and then came budget. And I get this question a lot: how could council not have known about the financial position we were in? And we didn't, because we were told that it wasn't that way. It wasn't that bad. We were aware of reserves, depleted reserves, but there was a lot of buffering in areas to keep numbers artificially low and keep funding through certain departments higher and so on. So we truly didn't know, and we rolled from a community hub funding submission right into a budget that specifically targeted amenities in the community, not just recreation, but art and culture and heritage. And so the timing could not have been any worse, and played into the divisiveness now that we're seeing in our communities, where they are pitted against each other because you're looking at who gets what and who loses what. But yeah, we'll see what happens with the calls for submission. I do feel strongly that it's a great option to go down the call for submission route, to put extra options in front of council before next budget, because this budget was a result of 0 options on the table. So we don't need to select any of these. It's not as strict of a process as the request for proposals, the RFP angle is. So we can sit with all of these proposals in front of us, and maybe none of them have merit, and maybe some of them do, but it's not suited to that community. And so we don't need to select any of them.
Now, how do you feel about our new CAO, Jason Burgess, and the job that he's doing with, trying to reach out and get more community involvement?
So far, so good. I appreciate his experience and his ability to kind of weigh in and guide us. For the most part, I would say this council doesn't know what the relationship with a CAO should be or should look like, because we've really gone without. Although we have had individuals in, there's been a lot of turnover. And so we haven't had someone consistent enough to build a relationship with, to build trust with. So it's nice to be able to have someone that you can go to and seek guidance and get a fresh set of eyes on stuff. It's also great. It's a great stabilizer for staff. They need support as well, and they've been going a long time without it. So, so far so good with Mr. Burgess. He seems to bring a good, fresh perspective to the table. But still, to your question of community input. I had not given thought to doing a public budget proposal, I guess. And I think it was just because I was new to the job and learning so many new things and trying to get through the budget in its entirety, and it was something Norfolk County had never done. It was never something that was suggested to us, and we said, no, let's not do it. It just wasn't the way it was done, and I won't speak for the rest of the council, but I think I was so busy learning so many other new things that I really wasn't able to take a step back and say, what are we missing here? And when Jason came, he said, you don't do this? You don't go to the public before you, like that's unheard of. We have to do this. And so although we made it out to one community town hall meeting prior to COVID with regards to the arenas, we went to Langton, it's not enough. And so this year we need to do more, and we need to do it in advance. We need to reach the public before decisions are made and share input.
Yeah, I feel like that has been a major step forward. As much as it kind of causes a bit of an uproar, it's still, I think that was the right call. It's really important that people aren't blindsided by decisions, and to hear the community out, then they're going to be more accepting, and council is also going to have that guidance of like, okay, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
Which is the best option that the community can live with?
And I hope that we bridge some of those gaps with this moving forward. I hope the community feels more consulted, but I do have a fear that we won't ever be able to share as much information as we would like. So prior to last year's budget decisions, a lot of that happened in camera, and that was related to staff and identifiable individuals and so on. So that was information that I don't know would have been necessarily shared with the public should we have gone out and roundtabled it prior to budget. So as we move forward, we'll see what happens, but the more conversations we can have with the community, I'll always be in support of that.
Now, obviously, first we have to focus on COVID recovery, like the economic recovery phase. Do you have any ideas to help stimulate our economy and get us back on our feet to recover from COVID?
That's such a tough one, because you walk the fine line between public safety and not encouraging too much too soon, and also being there to support businesses and tourism and so on. But that's not my wheelhouse. That's not my area of expertise. So I know that Mr. Burgess has some plans for tourism, and he'll brief council on that soon. So I look forward to hearing more about that. And we hear from the province about, getting shovel-ready plans for that. They're ready to stimulate the economy through providing funding to municipalities for projects that are ready to go as well. So we need to start thinking about big picture for the county, not just one-off tourism events here and there. But we also need to be there to support the businesses. There are many businesses who still can't operate at full capacity or at all if they're not able to put a patio on their restaurant, if they don't have a patio and they can't accommodate one. There's a lot of hurting businesses out there, so we need to come together with a bit of a plan, but I will wait for more information to be brought forward.
Okay. What would you like to see be the legacy of this council? Like, what are your biggest goals for this council?
Oh, good question. I always say I just want to leave it better than I found it. So that's my own personal goal. Whatever you can, they're not really measurable steps or actions that I'm looking to check off per se. But I think we have created an environment where we will encourage different people to run for council, and that's not just the doings of this council, that's the community showing out and asking for change when they voted. So together we have all accomplished that. When we did our strategic plan, we did put a lot of emphasis on the culture in the corporation, from everything from customer service to the efficiencies of doing your job. And I think we're starting to shine light on some of that. We're not fully there yet, but we are looking to just improve the community's relationship with Norfolk County. Whether you need a new blue box or to pay your tax bill or report a pothole on your road, we need to get better at how we respond to the community. So I think that's happening a little bit more, which I'm proud of. But I can't speak for council, but I think what I want to leave behind is just a more inclusive environment that asks for more engagement from the public, and we see different candidates pulling out to run and participate.
So with Port Dover, now your biggest concerns for Port Dover there right now is definitely the water situation, parking, and tourism.
Yeah.
So what sort of insight specific to the issues in Port Dover can you give us for all the constituents and other wards to kind of be more understanding?
Yeah, we're looking for, I would say water is the biggest priority, and I've been advocating, shouting from the treetops about a community hub for the last year and a half, and water is vital. There's no margin for error with water. Everyone deserves access to clean drinking water. And so, not that there's a concern at this point in time, but we aren't where we're supposed to be. We need to seriously address our capacity concerns, and council will be briefed on that, the latest happenings of where we're at with that project in August. I know that the mayor and staff have been working with Haldimand County, and there's been a lot of discussion put into a partnership with Haldimand, Six Nations, and Norfolk County to use their water supply and service all of Norfolk essentially, but Port Dover being the priority. So that's first and foremost, because development is on hold. We have a lot of developers who have investments in our community, and they can't move forward. And yeah, our residents deserve, peace of mind with water. So I have to wait for a little bit more information to see where we're at with that project, but that is the number one priority. Parking is always an issue in Port Dover, but we have a report coming forward either this upcoming Tuesday, I believe it is, discussing parking. So we're going to look at municipal parking lots and parking garages and paid parking and what is the preferred option. And back in the day, Port Dover used to have parking metered. And so do we give consideration to that again? There's some really neat ways to go about doing that. Solar powered units, and you need one for, an entire lot, and people can pay with credit card and get an update on their phone via text message and add more time or not. If they're out for dinner, they don't need to leave the table. So there's some unique ways to go about that, but we have to have that discussion as a council. And, I'm okay. Thank you. And tourism, Port Dover does well with that. We're well known. We have a reputation for a relaxing community where we offer waterfront access and beautiful rooftop patios and mom and pop shops that aren't rivaled by anything. They're so unique in nature, and great eating establishments. So we do well on that front, but I would like to see a focus switch into off-season tourism, what we do in the fall and the winter, and how we support our businesses when the traffic isn't coming in, as frequently.
All right. I'm just trying to think before we go on to the Board of Health issues, if there's anything else. I'm sure you're very excited for that part. Don't worry, I'll be nice.
It's okay.
No, I think you've handled yourself really well. Like lately, watching the Board of Health meetings and stuff. Like, you say you want to be an all-ward counselor, and I think you're really achieving that. And
Thank you.
yeah, it's going really well. Just in terms of development for Norfolk, what do you see, based on kind of what you hear from your constituents and from constituents in other wards, if you're sharing information between counselors, what sort of major investments and growth do you see we need to focus on for Norfolk, say, over even the next 10 years?
Yeah, actually, if I could back it up and go back, not to be all about Port Dover, but go back to Port Dover, development in Port Dover is another large priority, and we're working on a secondary waterfront plan right now. So we have a moratorium on development, and it came because of our water issues, but not, it's not solely attached to that. But this conversation we're having in Port Dover has merit from one end of the county to the other. What does development look like in Norfolk County? What do we want to look like in Port Dover? Do we want, what's our preferred growth size? And what type of additional amenities do we need? And when we're looking at extra amenities, maybe it's a second grocery store or another car wash, whatever it may be, another restaurant. Do we want to open our community up to chains and big box stores, or do we want to stay unique and small in the way that we are? And I would argue in Port Dover that we don't. We want to stay with our mom and pop shops, and of course we want to support the big box stores that we have already because they are local business owners. But I would rather see more independence in our amenities as we expand and grow, because we can get in the car and we can drive less than 15 minutes into Simcoe and find everything we need. So why would we take away from the Simcoe business owners who own big box stores when it's just a hop, skip, and a jump and away? So I think development as a whole in Norfolk County, we need to look at what community does what and what they do well, and build on that and grow with that. But looking at investments for the future, we need to invest in seniors. We need to, we have a large demographic of an older population here, and what do we offer them? We hear time and time again that we don't have enough family physicians. Everything, you've got to hop in the car and drive into the city for treatment if you're ill. So we need to do more in that way to protect what we have here and own the demographics that are Norfolk County, but we also can't turn a blind eye on all of the other demographics that live here or that we want to attract here, because that is the future, really. The kids that are living here now, the kids that are going to school, the kids that will return home from school if there's something here for them. And then there's entirely other new, demographic that we're not even touching on, and that's who might want to live here that hasn't lived here before, and what young adults and professionals can we attract to our community because we're offering A, B, and C now. So I remember in the election there was a lot of talk about bringing industry here, Toyotatsu and so on, and sure, that's a positive, and we're blessed to have them here in our community employing as many people as they do. But through my conversations when I did a lot of volunteering on the community hub, people were hesitant to move back home, or stay here because they didn't have the play aspect. They had the live and the work aspect, and they didn't have the play aspect here in Norfolk County. And by that I mean, what are you offering your kids after school hours? Is there an innovation hub that you can go and work on your small business with other like-minded individuals? Is there a 3D printer? And yes, we have those things. We have Groundswell now, which is great in downtown Simcoe. The libraries have 3D printers, but can we merge these things together and do them really, really well instead of a little bit here and a little bit there? And the same goes for community culture, arts, history, heritage, recreation. And so that was a lot of, the push on the community hub. It's an investment in the community. Some people say it's too big and we don't need it. And I say, let's try. I think Norfolk deserves it. The people who are here now deserve it. But I think it's also the next new form of industry where people will stay.
Now, I think to complement that, because like when you talk about the hub and the services that are going to be offered there, like sure, there'll be public access that, there will be certain days and times, but that doesn't necessarily always work for everyone's schedule. And like between work, sometimes it's hard to say like, all right, well, my kid wants to do swimming lessons or skating lessons, but like it just doesn't work for my schedule. And I think that's where it's important to have that collaboration, hopefully with the call for submissions, that you have the people who are users helping run it and give that insight.
Yeah.
But also to introduce some options that, people can just walk in and bring their kids to have fun, like the splash pads are great.
Yep.
But in the off season, like I would love to see like a flying squirrel or something like that, because you think, okay, what are options for kids' birthday parties?
Yeah.
Your kid has a birthday party, where can you take them? Well, there's the White Horse bowling alley, which
the rec center if the pool's open, and
we could use some more, to stop people from having to go out to Brantford or Hamilton, or some people go to London.
And we heard a lot every year, at budget and then through deputations throughout the year, that recreation and parents and user groups couldn't afford price increases. That was, the user fees were too high. That was the bottom line for them. And now that we're in this unique situation and the community is very hungry to protect what they have and keep what they have in their own communities, we're hearing from people that they'll pay more. They'll pay to use, and that, that is extremely reasonable. And before we thought it wasn't an option. And so I'd like to dig into that a little bit more, and obviously keep things reasonably priced and make sure that anyone can participate, as best as possible in the programs that are being offered. But I guess before you make a decision, the public consultation matters, because with new information, decisions and people's outlook changes, right? So now they're interested in retaining what they have a little bit more, and it's worth digging into.
Now, I know you discussed with John a little bit about the library situation.
Yeah.
And that whole idea there. So can you give us any insight? Because it seems, libraries, I get that there's certain libraries where they are underutilized, that they're not having, the operational costs, and the usage is not always justifying the cost.
Right.
So do you have any insight into why we have to cut that budget by 10% and how the library might be able to achieve that?
I'll speak to the why cut by 10% first. That was the conversation around budget time happened specifically as an effort to find equitable cuts across the board. So if everyone, if recreation and culture and arts and tourism, everyone was losing something, and we were trying to keep taxes low and trying to provide baseline services, then it was about finding equality in the cuts across the board. As for how they would do that, I can't speak to the service. They offer a lot of great services that are outside of a typical library, which it has gone over well with the community. I think that's probably what saves the library in some sense. Some counselors might say, just stick to books. But I think that it's been self-preservation as the community grows and evolves and we become more modern and require different, services for small businesses and so on. It's probably been a bit of self-preservation for the library to adapt and offer these new things, keep people coming through the door. But I don't know enough about the services in full and how they would do that. The library board specifically would go through that. And the conversation I had with John, Councillor Rabbits is on the library board, and I brought it up to Mr. Burgess and passed the torch over to Ian. He's going to bring it to the library board for further discussion and then update council.
Yeah, he was telling me about it yesterday, and I thought, like, you know what, that's smart, because then that also eliminates some risk too, because I know, like, my kids, they've gone to little day trips,
Right.
you know, from their school, walking over to the library here,
Yeah.
and it's like, all right, well, it'd be that much safer, and like, I think it would be good for the schools,
Yep.
because then they have a larger range of books as well.
Yeah.
And it would certainly
And
be
I think
good
the
to
model's
share
already,
that budget.
yeah, the model's already there, right? With the Port Dover
Yeah.
arrangement, the partnership here. Yeah, so that would be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, they offer so many great services. Like the Saturdays, you can go in and you do story time
Yeah.
and crafts and
And
everything.
they're quite innovative during COVID. Like, a lot of stuff has gone online, and
Yeah,
they're flexible, which I appreciate.
yeah, they're great. And honestly, like, you know, if it needs to be that, you know, kids have a free membership, but adults have to have like pay $5 or $10
Yep.
a year, even $20 a year for a library card.
Yep.
You know, if it's a choice between that and having to shut down a library, like,
Yes.
we'd rather pay for sure.
And that's exactly, the same conversation that's happened with user fees for recreation. And so I know the library board is collecting information in a survey right now, and I think it'll bring back some really great information.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about the Board of Health.
Let me stretch first.
Now, COVID, no one saw this coming. So, what can you share just about how this experience has been, and how, you know, when you signed up for this job, you'd never anticipated this, right?
Never anticipated a lot of stuff that's happened. It's been, foot on the gas pedal since day one, whether it's the budget or, staff, in-house issues and turnover, or COVID. It has been nonstop since the election. But, that's what you sign up for. You never quite know what's going to happen, and the community expects leadership. Whether you're a citizen or an elected official, it makes no difference to them whether you're adjusting mentally to what your role is. You're an elected official now, and people expect leadership, and so that's our job to provide it. COVID has been extremely difficult. I think a lot of people look to us for answers, and we've been looking to the provincial government, as has every other municipality, and so we're waiting, just as the rest of the community is, for updates and new regulations and new guidelines, and then they come, and then they need to be interpreted on our local level, and then from there we'll make some judgment calls as to what that next phase or that next implementation looks like. But it's been extremely difficult, certainly for the public as well. Again, going back to our older demographic, we really have to work hard to protect high risk and susceptible people here. But from an operations standpoint, not enough enforcement. Opening phases when municipalities aren't quite ready and don't quite yet know how we're going to handle and pivot and move with it, and be prepared for residents. Currently, we're seeing a lot of municipalities including mandatory masks in public spaces. Is that something Norfolk County should be doing? And so on. And then we really get down into the weeds of our unique situation here with our Section 22 orders, which have included cottage goers being told to stay away from their property, which is just unprecedented. And our isolation plans and quarantine plans for 3 temporary farm workers per bunkhouse. So because we're rural in nature, because we have so many temporary farm workers here, because we have so many cottage goers here, these extra issues that have popped up are really kind of specific to our niche area, and working through that alone has been difficult as well.
Now, yeah, I find it kind of strange, like with the cottage, we have this huge influx in the summer with the cottage goers, but then we also have the migrant workers, and you know, we need to protect the migrant workers. That's like number one priority. But on the same hand, we have people coming from the GTA or wherever they live down here to cottage country, and we aren't asking them to quarantine themselves or anything like that, because like, oh, they're only going to be here for a weekend or a week or whatnot. So where do you see the balance between prioritizing protecting the migrant workers, but also making sure that we respect their rights and give them the same freedoms as any other Canadian citizen?
Right. It's extremely difficult because the argument has been made both ways. If you're protecting the wishes of the farming and the ag community, and therefore the wishes of the temporary farm workers for less or more leniency and more freedom, then you are jeopardizing the community's health and safety. And I don't believe that to be entirely true. There is merit to some of that, but that it's not black and white that way. It's not one or the other. So that has been difficult to juggle. And but the Board of Health, you meet and you put on your health and safety hat, and you don't make decisions based on economics and financial burdens, and you make decisions based on the health and the safety of the community. So when we first dealt with that Section 22 appeal, I was supportive of Dr. Nessathari. I was supportive of staff because I'm not a doctor. I don't have the same information that he does about COVID and about controlling it and protecting the community at large. So I trusted his judgment call, and that was his job, and I allowed him to do it. My position changed when the appeal, when the trial was decided upon, and the county, Dr. Nessathari, decided to appeal it. That was where I pivoted. It was about resources for me going forward. I know that the original decision made by that trial certainly gave consideration to the health and the safety of our community. And so from that point forward, it was about how is the county using, what resources are we using on this appeal, and what's the big picture? How are we building relationships with community members? Because long after I'm gone, long after I'm not in this seat anymore, the agriculture community and industry will still be there. So go back to the legacy. What am I going to leave to the next council member who does my job? Not a great relationship with the ag community.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's really important. And what I would like to see more of is engagement with the migrant workers themselves, and not some group from Toronto speaking for them. Like, I find some of the advocacy for the migrant workers is great, but some of it is kind of, condescending. Like, if you meet a migrant worker and you speak with them, like, they're not this frail, oh, you must protect us from every risk of COVID. Like, they are strong, hardworking, adaptable, intelligent people just like the rest of us.
Very familiar with the community for the most part, have been coming for many years. Yeah, I do agree with that. And I had this conversation recently with a staff member. Why are we always speaking about them? Why are we always speaking at them? When are we going to start speaking to them? When are we going to give them a voice and them a seat at the table? And I think there's an argument for a position, an opening on our agriculture advisory board from a temporary farm worker who might be here. So they don't meet quite often in the summer because of work, but someone who's here and not returning home right away, to be able to provide some insight and a voice on some of these issues. And we've got a new working group that we've just created where the Agriculture Advisory Board will have a direct line into a staff member at the health unit, and they'll be updated on any policy and program changes as it relates to agriculture. And then that will go back to the Agriculture Advisory Board. It'll have a standing spot on their agenda, and it'll go into the minutes where the board can then discuss all of these policy changes. And let's just say they were talking about the Section 22 order, which has no room for argument, no room for changing a Section 22 order. Dr. Nessathari's position stands. Board of Health cannot change it. Council cannot change it. The AAB cannot change it. But wouldn't it have been interesting to have some minutes provided to the Board of Health with the AAB's position on it right out of the gate? And wouldn't it have been even better to have comments from a temporary farm worker who would be subjected to that isolation plan included?
Yeah, because talking to farmers, from what I've heard is that, they have these guys that come to the same farm every year. They have a great relationship with them. And, there's these cultural differences that maybe our medical officer, as wonderful as he has been and so proactive, like really
Yes.
hands down, like amazing in a lot of respects. I don't know if he necessarily heeds the cultural differences, and I think that voice is really important to have at the table of, what are the priorities of the migrant worker. And if the migrant workers come out and say, what, we would rather deal with being stuck in a hotel for 2 weeks than have to go through a whole bunch of hoops after that initial 14-day quarantine period. But I still think to protect them because of the congregate living, I feel like there does need to be some extra safety precautions after that initial 14 days.
Yeah, and I think testing is something that we need to put more weight into. We're seeing the federal government, the provincial government encourage more testing. We're seeing it trickle down into various, newsletters like the Ontario Grape Growers Association. There's an emphasis on testing now, just specifically through them, and so I think that there's merit in more testing as well, and but we haven't quite got there yet. And in our defense as well, the province announced that everyone should go and run off and get testing at the first availability, and we weren't equipped for that at that point in time, so that was also a little scary. But you learn and you make changes and you pivot as we go. But these are I think the end of the day, if you try to find a silver lining, COVID has turned the light on and entirely sanitized a couple of processes, and maybe bunkhouses is one, and the treatment of these migrant farm workers and temporary farm workers in communities is one. Long-term care is another. There are a lot of gaps that have not been identified and closed for many, many, many years, and COVID has given shone a little bit of light on that.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree. Now, I found with, I think it was Michelle, and kind of there was some collaboration on that motion, that Dr. Nessathari is to review his Section 22 order, and this was before the appeal, right? He has to review the Section 22 order at least every 2 weeks and give like a formal update, and also to engage the agricultural community better. Now, I know that you guys made a huge step forward in that last Board of Health meeting with that part of it, but I just feel that because of the reason given by his attorney in that emergency Board of Health meeting about how repealing it would cause them to have to review every individual bunkhouse, and an amount of work that the health unit just does not have capacity for. What solutions do you see as viable options to make everyone happy in that situation?
Well, first, I guess I'll use this opportunity to give a shout out to our health unit, because they have been working 12-hour days and weekends and tirelessly since COVID hit. And I don't think that they've really got a lot of recognition for the work they're doing. So thank you to the health unit. But that's I don't know if that's fact. We heard that every single plan would need to be reviewed, and sure, let's say the number was changed from 3 to 6, then, that's possible. But I'm sure there are ways of finding efficiencies. I haven't heard it from our own staff. I heard it from Dr. Nasathari's legal counsel that was the case. But I would like to see less time spent on an appeal and maybe more time spent on educating farmers on the things that they would need to do to equip their bunkhouse to house more. So there are bunkhouses right now that have more than 3 men in isolation, and they've worked on a one-to-one plan with the health unit, and the health unit has gone ahead and cleared them for more. So that includes separate entrance and exits, additional washrooms, those pinch points that we've talked about in Board of Health, the close spaces and hallways, kitchen space. So if you're able to accommodate those extra things, then you would be allowed to house more workers. So is it ideal for every farmer to go through and reno their bunkhouse right now? No. But are there things that we can do to assist them with that? I'm sure that there are, and that would include not being so stringent on our building codes and building permits regulations right now. Can they have a portable washroom instead of an additional washroom? And like I said, I think that the COVID will shine light on the way that things have been operating in bunkhouses, on farms, in long-term care. And so a lot of farmers will probably go out and make amendments to their houses now and the living quarters now. But how can we work with them before then to fix this? And I think that there's merit to have a conversation on the square footage of the bunkhouse and the allotment of people. I think there's also an argument in the finding cohorts, working groups. The first 3 men are in the kitchen and use the washroom from this time until this time, and then the farmer's responsible for cleaning that area, having a professional cleaner come in and clean the washrooms in the kitchen, and then the next 3 is permitted to use, and then in between then is there a portable washroom that they're using. Norfolk County is using portable washrooms right now because we felt the one individual washroom was better than the trailer or the confined public washroom spaces, and we're cleaning them very frequently, multiple times a day. So there's got to be an answer.
Yeah, well, we did an interview with Brett Schuyler, and one of the things we talked about for options was for the larger bunkhouses that have a good square footage for social distancing but don't have the individual amenities like the bathrooms and the kitchens all being separate. He said if it means we have to order takeout, like order in meals for that 2-week period, fine. If we have to come bring a bunch of porta potties or even, those like camp showers, if you have to do that, fine. And then in the last Board of Health meeting, the Agricultural Board had proposed a 70% capacity, kind of a similar approach to churches, right? Yeah. And I know Mr. Burgess, he had kind of emphasized that wasn't quite enough. Maybe perhaps 50% during that 2 weeks and then go up to 70% after could be a viable option. But yeah, I definitely think we're starting to move in the right direction of actually having those conversations.
I agree. I think they should have happened a lot sooner. But they didn't. And so we're here and there's no use in pointing fingers. What are we going to do about it now? But I also, my understanding, talking to the chair of the Agricultural Advisory Board, that was a working document. And I think it was whipped up in about 36 hours. Jason contacted them, worked on it. They worked on it very quickly. Jason worked on his response very quickly and got it to council as soon as they both could. But it's my understanding that was a working document, and I think that maybe there was 70% capacity was put in there with the hopes that they would get negotiated down to less than that. I think they were asking for, in their perfect world, this is what we would have, and they were open for discussion and negotiation, but that it didn't. That's not the way it happened.
Yeah, you got to ask high. Yeah, for sure. Okay, my battery's good. Now with I was going to say about the whole motion for Dr. Nessathari to have to engage the farming community, but then with that justification of, oh, if we repeal the 3 to a bunkhouse rule, we can't handle the staff it's going to take and the resources that it would take to do those individual inspections. And so it seems kind of misleading, like, oh yeah, sure, I'll review it every 2 weeks, but I'm never going to change it because of what it's going to do to the health unit. I know the Board of Health has made a motion to ask for some provincial and federal help with running a hotel program that the farmers and migrant workers can choose to participate in. But has the Board of Health considered asking for that federal or provincial help similar to what they had with the Army helping with long-term care, in helping the health unit with their inspections? You know, maybe have the Army come in and do the measurements and kind of the grunt work, and then that would take some of the load away from the health unit workers, who they could just come in and do the things that, okay, they absolutely are the only ones qualified to do these.
I think there's a bit of that happening already. There's an overlap happening already. We've heard that from the farmers. There's federal inspections, there's, Farms Ontario inspections, provincial inspections, and then there's our health unit inspections. And sometimes those things are happening at the same time, multiple times in a day. So there are varying levels of inspection that occur outside of just the municipality and the health unit already. And I think it would be wise to find efficiencies in that program. Take an inspection on the federal level and then compare it to what municipally we are requiring, and go from there. I'm not sure what level of support has been requested from the health unit with that respect. And really, sometimes you go into Board of Health, and Councillor Columbus said it just last week, sometimes I wonder what we're even doing here. Your hands are tied. And so we're sitting through another presentation about transmission of COVID. And there's no really new information being brought forward to us. And it's a bad use of everyone's time, I would argue. But the emergency team gets together. I'm not even sure with what frequency anymore. It was happening daily very early on in COVID, and the mayor participates in that, as does Mr. Burgess, and they would be much more aware of what has been requested. The Board of Health has not been briefed on if any support has been requested at this time, and really, I'm familiar of the other inspections through some of the deputations we've had from the farming community, not because of the health unit.
Mm-hmm. So there's kind of a bit of a disconnect in communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now with the one council meeting, oh my gosh, the one that went on, it was like the Board of Health and the council meeting that went on for like 8 hours.
Yeah.
And I had to listen to all of that. Oh my gosh.
That was the first one, I think, was it not? That was prior to the appeal?
Yeah.
Yes.
And oh my goodness. So I was sitting there waiting for someone to bring up the fact that Hayden Dooney's whole deputation was based on the argument of square footage. Mm-hmm. And finally, you got a turn to speak at the table 3 hours in. I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. Like, you kind of refocus the argument there, but
yeah, we went off a little bit, that's for sure. And then I think we really were, they were coming down quite hard on Dr. Nessathari at that point in time about, making the changes, and he was saying he was not. So at that point in time, I was in full support of him and the program and his decisions, and I tried to pivot and refocus the argument to, he's made a commitment to reviewing this in 2 weeks, and he's made a commitment to coming back to the Board of Health and updating us in 2 weeks. But then that didn't happen. We didn't have a Board of Health meeting for, I'd have to confirm, but I think more than 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Going on 4 in an emergency pandemic with no updates. I read about the appeal process in the media because I didn't see the press release that was sent out to the media and council at the exact same time. And just again, no communication, none. And that I really, really struggle with. I also struggled with some of the language that went out in that press release that, expressed disappointment and so on. And it didn't quite say who was disappointed, who was speaking, whose opinion was being expressed in that press release. So that for me was a pivotal moment where it became about knowing that another higher level of government had given consideration to health and safety of the community at large and still and favored with Mr. Schuyler. And so at that point in time, it was about preservation of relationships and not spending the resources on an appeal.
Yeah, definitely. I could not believe and how quickly they appealed it too. I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, how is this justice? You say, oh, well, there's this appeal process. So if, there's any unjust rules, you have this right to appeal. Well, an appeal means nothing if they're just going to appeal the appeal.
Yeah. And this can go on. There are multiple additional levels after this that it can carry through to. It can really go on for quite some time. But, I really struggle with what our purpose is. And we're all learning on the fly here. It's our first emergency pandemic and first Section 22 orders. But what is the process when this Board of Health is consulted or not consulted and has no ability to change? And there's an argument. Should we be able to change Section 22 orders that are focused on health and safety? Maybe not, right? Mm-hmm. But at some point in time, when the community's up in arms, all of the Board of Health has expressed concerns over this program in one way or another. We're spending taxpayers' money of both Haldimand and Norfolk County because it's the health unit. At what point in time do we have staff that look to find the yes? That's what we called it in our strategic plan when we talked about changing corporate culture and changing the way we deal with the public and building relationships with the public and customer service. We called it finding the yes. So everyone doesn't have to win and the county doesn't have to lose all the time or vice versa, but we've got to meet in the middle. And we're not budging right now.
Yeah, and I think, that's been pretty painful to watch where it's like you see support within the Board of Health with like you and Councillor Van Passen and Councillor Columbus and Councillor Micheli, but then on the other hand, your hands are tied and it's got to be a really difficult position to be in for sure. Now, in terms of the migrant workers, what would you like to see in terms of better representation and rights? Like, I know some things you may not be able to attack on a municipal level because it's beyond, if it's like EI is a federal issue and stuff like that. What sort of change, though, would you like to see in migrant worker rights for the time that they do spend here?
First and foremost, a seat at the table, a voice. I think stop, I said it before, stop speaking about them like they're not in the room. I think that's a big first step, and it's an easy first step. But outside of that, I'd have to really educate myself a lot more on the issues facing that particular cohort and what the municipality on our local level could do to support them further. But this has really, COVID and the Section 22 order has really opened my eyes to how important they are in the community and what they offer to the community. So I certainly have to do a little bit more research on that. But I think the first and the easiest step is to give them a voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I don't know if there's something existing already, but like you look at labor laws and that sort of thing, increasing their level of protection that way with the labor laws, but also even if it's tough to increase their rights in that capacity quickly, perhaps, setting up like a hotline with the health unit that like, hey, migrant workers, here's a number. If you feel unsafe at work, you call the health unit and you report it.
Right. Yeah. And I think the health unit has been doing that as well. It's maybe not official. There isn't an official hotline, but the health unit has been very helpful with some of their needs and concerns as well. I've certainly had complaints about farms, and I think the community at large is more aware as well. And the health unit has been wonderful and helpful, kind of getting to the bottom of it and doing so in a delicate, confidential manner as well. But yeah, I think more of an open dialogue is the way to start.
Now, with kind of more towards council issues, one thing that we have seen in terms of like downtown Simcoe, where the migrant workers are coming in to, well, typically now this year they're kind of offering more grocery services on the farms because of COVID, but previously, Thursday, Friday nights, everybody is coming into town to do the grocery shopping and get out. Do you see some potential for growth and like more community support for the migrant workers when they do come into town, because they do support our businesses so much when they are there?
Yeah, absolutely. What a faithful market, to tap into and open your business and respond to and turn a profit on. It's not really weather dependent. They're going to come in and get their groceries anyways. The start of the season to the end of the season. So there are businesses who have adjusted their entire market strategy to profit off of these guys coming in and supporting them, and kudos to them for being available and making those changes. But yeah, I think that was already starting to happen in the community. We see the Young and Free Press group in downtown Simcoe blogging about and making videos about festivals and events. There was a small Caravana style festival that happened last year, the Farms of Norfolk Football Association, the tournaments. I really think that we were headed in the right direction, and it's a shame that due to COVID, those things won't be able to continue. But I know without a doubt that there are some really key community players who are behind this movement for, more inclusive, inviting environment for the temporary farm workers. And I know without a doubt those things will continue to grow and expand, certainly in the Simcoe area as well.
Yeah, and I think with COVID, it really has opened up the appreciation, of the community for the migrant workers that come here. And I think that awareness is going to really unite, when we are able to have those activities again. It's not just going to be the farmers and the migrant workers going. It's going to be more the community coming and showing their support and appreciation.
Yeah, and I think it's typical Norfolk County fashion. How easy is it to just say, "Hi, how are you? How was your day? Thanks for the work you're doing in our community." And we are separate. Let's not pretend we're not. We are very separate. There are still community members who aren't opening and welcoming when the guys come in and go to the bank or go get groceries on the weekend. But there's a lot of people who are, and I think you're right. Certainly now after COVID, there's a newfound appreciation for the work they're doing in our community. But I think it's really easy. It just starts with a, "Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
Welcome to our community. Welcome back."
Yeah, well, I know there's Wayne, the one friend of like Dustin and his family there. When Jim invited him, I can't remember how many years he had been coming, but it was a long time. And he said, "You are the first white person who has
invited me for dinner."
Yeah.
Ugh. It's true.
Yeah.
What would you do if you had a new neighbor come into your neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
We should be doing more.
Yeah, definitely. Trying to think, is there anything else that you'd like to touch on in terms of like Board of Health stuff or Port Dover stuff?
Oh, I think that was pretty good.
All right, perfect.
Thought you were going to ask me about the haircut, but you didn't.
Oh, I would like to put that debacle behind us, unless you want to talk about it.
No,
I think, in terms of like Mayor Chop's conduct, like, obviously she's a couple times.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Van Passen was pretty fair about his response to it, where it's like, well, all we can ask is, we raise the issue and ask her to do better, right? Like, I think sometimes the concerns are legitimate,
Yeah.
and other times it turns into a witch hunt.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's really fair. Like, you don't need to beat a dead horse. And
No.
But do you feel that, like, with Mayor Chop's apologies and that, do you think it's been adequate how you guys have dealt with the conduct issues?
Well, technically, we haven't dealt with the latest conduct issue. In all things considered, that hasn't come before council. There hasn't been an integrity commissioner report, or so everything we've dealt with has been, the other publicized issues, the sandwich and the ripping of the paper and so on. Those things have been addressed and issued, and I would say that there's a lot of additional background as to how and why she's done what she's done, that she has expressed in council, she's shared with council, and I think that council has been lenient and understanding and ready to put it behind us and not have that hovering over us all the time. But I think the haircut was a little bit different for council, but it hasn't been dealt with in an official capacity. The problem is, we're all under the same blanket. We are all one council. So when we make national news for something good or for something bad, we're all painted with the same brush, and that's something you just have to accept and try to conduct yourself in a way that represents your county and your council members in a way that you think is suitable and appropriate. There is no guidebook on how to be the perfect mayor or the perfect councillor. You're elected and you're given a procedural bylaw and the municipal act, and off you go. But those things don't speak to etiquette and how you carry yourself and your character and your leadership skills. So we're all different in our own ways, and we all handle situations differently. But I think when you make a mistake, which is bound to happen, it's about how you redeem yourself and what you do with it afterwards, and that's telling of your character, and that's telling of your leadership style.
Yeah, and I feel for her argument about supporting small businesses, because I think the province really did miss a huge opportunity to help small business when they did their reopening. Like if we had have said, all right, in terms of public health transmission, a big factor is the amount of people. So rather than having a large chain grocery store, while they kind of were able to stay open, but say a large chain store being able to reopen or not having to do curbside pickup anymore type thing, we should have said, let's go by employees. If you are a small business with less than 30 employees, you can open first because, you have less employees and less people. But
it's that blurred line of health and safety of the community, but then the government was looking at economic recovery as well. And so how do you pump out more money faster? It's those big box stores, and is that right? No, it's not right, and it put our small businesses and our communities at a massive disadvantage. But it's that, again, you're all of a sudden you're a normal person, and then you're an elected official, and the margin for error closes in on you. You're not able to do things that the community doesn't agree with or views as reckless or isn't, a well thought out plan anymore. The expectation and the bar is raised around you, and you're expected to lead. And so you've got a lot of responsibility, and you wear that responsibility, but people make mistakes, and you will make a mistake. But again, how you recover and try to redeem yourself is
what's important. Yeah. Well, and it's tough, like sometimes you don't always have all of the information that you need to really make a solid, informed decision. So your opinions can change. What do you think about Mayor Chop and her tendency to frequently call out our MPP, Toby Barrett?
Yeah.
Do you think that is, something that is promoting accountability, or do you think it's something that's damaging the progress that this council could make?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. It's again, it's shining light on past practices and previous practices, and a little bit of it is a cry for help. You were a creature of the province, and there is this system of steps that you must adhere to and go through. But yeah, I think, sometimes there's merit and sometimes there isn't. Again, leadership skills and etiquette and how you handle yourself in the public, that's all left in your own court when you're an elected official. There are no rules really telling you how you should or should not act. And Mayor Chop, she beats to her own drum. But we do need to have a relationship with them. And I think it's not a healthy one right now with Mr. Barrett's office and his staff and so on. We need to look to repair that. We need them, and but I also would argue that they need us. They need us to implement things after they come down from the province, and our for Mr. Barrett to be able to do his job, I think we can provide him with valid feedback that he can take up the ladder and advocate for. So we really need to get back on the same page here. The community hub again is another great example. If you don't have provincial support rooting for you to bring home money, you're probably not going to get it. So no one is going to win with damaged reputations all over Norfolk County, with the ag community, with arts and culture, with recreation on the West End, with a flawed relationship in our Member of Parliament's office. So we need to get back on track. But I also think that this council would be very open and appreciative of more support as well if we're able to fix that relationship.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an important step, especially as we get closer to really having to plan our economic recovery from COVID.
And Toby's asking those questions already. Tourism and economic recovery, what's important to you and what are we going to do? So he's already thinking that, and yeah.
Good. Yeah. It always works better if you collaborate and work together than the province, his office trying to do their separate thing and you guys doing your own thing. So one last thing I want to touch on is Mayor Chop brought up a really good point about the structure of the Board of Health and how Haldimand is on the hook for 40% of the cost, but they have no representation. If you had the decision-making power to design that change in structure, how would you see the most ideal scenario?
I think the mayor certainly of Haldimand should have a voice, a seat at the table to represent his constituents. But I don't think it should necessarily stop there. I quite often have questioned why, in the nicest way possible, a mismatched group of elected officials sit around the table that is council, but also now gets to represent the health and safety of the community as Board of Health. And, I'm passionate about certain things. I'm passionate about fitness and healthy lifestyle choices and activity, but that doesn't mean that I know anything about a dental program for kids or seniors, or, ticks in our community. And so, yes, I think Haldimand deserves some representation at the table, absolutely, without a doubt. But I also wonder if there's a better way to build the Board of Health. Is that community members with expert advice and insight and knowledge to a few of these topics that are important to our community. So, we've got a Health and Social Services Board that does a little bit of that as well. It has representation from Haldimand and Norfolk, but it's not a holistic approach has not yet been found to the Board of Health.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to see kind of, maybe we have one political representation from each county, which could be the mayors, or even if, say, the people want to elect a Board of Health member from council. Yeah. And then have, say, a nurse, someone in long-term care. Yeah. Someone from the agricultural advisory board, someone like a migrant worker. Yes. And someone from, say, like the child services, like the early on service center or something like that. You have to represent each demographic. Look at
our community issues, addictions, and those types of issues aren't really, there's no expert matter on that. Certainly our staff, I don't want to pretend that they're not very good at what they do, but the staff can't pass a recommendation in a report. They can recommend what they think the best plan is, and we can agree with that or not, but it's not a perfect system.
Definitely. All right. Well, I think that's good. If there's anything.
No, that's great.
All right.
Thank you. And for Mr. Barrett to be able to do his job, I think we can provide him with valid feedback that he can take up the ladder and advocate for. So we really need to get back on the same page here. The community hub again is another great example. If you don't have provincial support rooting for you to bring home money, you're probably not going to get it. So no one is going to win with damaged reputations all over Norfolk County. With the ag community, with arts and culture, with recreation on the West End, with a flawed relationship in our Member of Parliament's office. So we need to get back on track. But I also think that this council would be very open and appreciative of more support as well if we're able to fix that relationship.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an important step, especially as we get closer to really having to plan our economic recovery from COVID.
And Toby's asking those questions already. Tourism and economic recovery, what's important to you and what are we going to do? So he's already thinking that, and yeah.
Good. Yeah. It always works better if you collaborate and work together than the province, his office trying to do their separate thing and you guys doing your own thing. So one last thing I want to touch on is Mayor Chop brought up a really good point about the structure of the Board of Health and how Haldimand is on the hook for 40% of the cost, but they have no representation. If you had the decision-making power to design that change in structure, how would you see the most ideal scenario?
I think the mayor certainly of Haldimand should have a voice, a seat at the table to represent his constituents, but I don't think it should necessarily stop there. I quite often have questioned why, in the nicest way possible, a mismatched group of elected officials sit around the table that is council, but also now gets to represent the health and safety of the community as Board of Health. And, I'm passionate about certain things. I'm passionate about fitness and healthy lifestyle choices and activity, but that doesn't mean that I know anything about a dental program for kids or seniors or ticks in our community. And so yes, I think Haldimand deserves some representation at the table, absolutely, without a doubt. But I also wonder if there's a better way to build the Board of Health. Is that community members with expert advice and insight and knowledge to a few of these topics that are important to our community. So we've got a Health and Social Services Board that does a little bit of that as well. It has representation from Haldimand and Norfolk, but it's not a holistic approach has not yet been found to the Board of Health.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to see kind of, maybe we have one political representation from each county, which could be the mayors, or even if, say, the people want to elect a Board of Health member from council.
Yeah.
And then have, say, a nurse, someone in long-term care.
Yeah.
Someone from the agricultural advisory board, someone like a migrant worker, and someone from, say, like the child services, like the early on service center or something like that. You have to represent each demographic.
Look at our community issues, addictions, and those types of issues aren't really, there's no expert matter on that. Certainly our staff, I don't want to pretend that they're not very good at what they do, but the staff can't pass a recommendation in a report. They can recommend what they think the best plan is, and we can agree with that or not, but it's not a perfect system.
Definitely. All right. Well, I think that's good. If there's anything.
No, that's great.
All right.
Thank you.